can astrology indicate who will be a musician, a painter, or an athlete? Can it? I mean, is it really true? Like, do people with a lot of Cancer or fourth house tend to be in domestic jobs? Is there something actually tangible going on or not? Or with forecasting, is there something in common that happens when people are in accidents? And a lot of people like to debate these things or feel sure that they know the answer. Well, I don't particularly like to debate it or tell you what the answer is. I just want to find out. And one of our most exciting areas of research has been on bipolar disorder, also things like anxiety disorder, et cetera. So can astrology tell us these things? Well, ta-da, unfortunately, somebody went out and collected data. Mikkel and Francoise Gauquelin, who are very famous for their research, they claim that Mars is in a certain part of the sky when athletes are born. Well, what Gauquelin concluded in his research was not as interesting to me, and I can explain why later. If I remember to, you can ask me. But his findings were actually not that interesting to me for technical reasons. But what is interesting to me with Gauquelin is that he has data. I mean, he went to the birth record offices and he got the birth data with birth time for athletes, musicians, painters, scientists, politicians, other professions. So Gauquelin and other people who collected data, they are like my savior, because without data, I couldn't answer my question, does astrology really work outside of my own individual projections or insights or divination or psychic ability or whatever? So what am I going to do with this data? I've got all these athletes, musicians. Well, first thing is I got the data and I put it into our software, the Kepler and Sirius software. So I have it and I can work with it. Well, you can do what you might call black box research, like artificial neural networks. In other words, you have very few assumptions and you go in and you use some kind of artificial intelligence or data mining to go in there and find out what's going on. Well, in the 1990s, I didn't know anything about data mining. I do now. That was one of my areas of specialization when I got a master's degree in research methods. Later, part of my obsession with figuring this out is really developing the skills to do the research properly. I'm telling you, this is a lifelong obsession, and obsession's not an exaggeration. So, um, so now at this point, I could do it. That's one way. Another way is maybe you will already have a clear idea. This is what a lot of people think research is. Like I think people with Mars Uranus aspects are athletes, and I think it's trines and sextiles with a 5-degree orb or something. So you could test a specific theory. That would be a second thing you can do. Or third, and I put it in bright blue because this is what I do exploratory research that's theory-based. And I think this is kind of the common sense thing to do. Like you have an idea that maybe Mars and Uranus or Mars and Jupiter or something have something to do with athletic ability. Well, let's see what Mars is doing in the charts. So rather than having a very narrow hypothesis, I have a range of possibilities that I'm going to look at. This is one of the most common things people do. And I want to say straight away that it's not because this approach is better than artificial neural networks or something else, or better than testing theories. It's just what I did. All of these are valid, and they can support each other. So we put the data of Gauquelin's professional groups into the software. We also hired someone to enter the birth data from journals and magazines. I added a ton of research features, and I studied research methods and got an MA degree. I would have gotten a PhD, but they wouldn't let me write a dissertation on astrology for good reasons. It wasn't really possible. And this is what I did. This is the kind of research that I do. I use data visualization. Data visualization is one of the hot, sexy buzzwords of the 21st century for total nerds. Data visualization is just so totally awesome. And data visualization means you don't jump into the research looking at numbers, like, is this statistically significant? You know, blah, blah, blah. Did I prove this? No, 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 no. Just get a feel for what's going on and look at it and get it more of an intuitive feeling based on the fact that you're an astrologer. Try to improve your astrological sensitivity. This may surprise some people because they think research is a bunch of cerebral, you know, like frontal cortex activity. It's not. It's whole body activity typically. So, so here's an example. What's in the charts of astrologers? So instead of having, you know, a data mining thing, or instead of having a hypothesis, I'm mainly doing theory-based exploratory research. Again, not because it's the best. Everybody's tuned in a different way. This is just what I gravitated to. And here it is. This is the distance between Mercury and Uranus. I didn't write down how many astrologers. I think it's 150 astrologers or something. So however many it is, I think this is just the ones with AA data. So you have to have data. We now have, I think it's 60,000 charts in the Sirius software. The next version is going to have over 100,000. So you have to have data. We just keep getting more and more data. So we can pull it up, and there's a feature in there where you can just say, what is the distance between Mercury and Uranus? Now, this is very weird, totally weird, is that what happens if you look at the distribution of Mercury and Uranus. I hope you guys are getting the feel of this. So I'm not going in with a specific theory. I just want to see, what are Mercury and Uranus doing for astrologers? Because, you know, Uranus is supposed to rule astrology. Mercury is supposed to rule astrology according to ancients. Mercury, Uranus, should be something going on. Maybe Mercury and Uranus are sextile and trine. Well, among this group of charts, it's the reverse. Astrologers do specifically avoid having Mercury sextile or trine Uranus. And here on this graph, I've, you know, labeled things a little more clearly so you can see what's going on. What it's specifically showing is that among this group of astrologers, the lowest angular distance, if you group it into 10-degree areas, is 50 to 60 degrees, and also 110 to 120. And then if you go 10 degrees after the trine or sextile, they both go up, still kind of low. And what's totally weird about this, or intriguing, is that the whole graph looks symmetrical, like the right side looks like a reflection of the left side. I don't know what it means, but this is the fun thing about the research. You see interesting things. So this is now, I didn't know it at the time in the 90s, but later on they started calling this evidence-based. Evidence-based means, like medicine. Doctors really don't know what to do if you have a cold or something. I mean, you know, psychologists really don't know what to do if you have a certain problem. So they don't know, but because they don't know, these professions have decided to be evidence-based, which means we don't know, but this is the best evidence we have. So the best evidence we have is the opposite of what a lot of us astrologers would say. Astrologers actually tend to avoid, you know, if you're going to be an astrologer, you probably have less likelihood of Mercury sextile Uranus or Mercury trine Uranus than the average person. So, you know, once you start looking at the data, sometimes people get kind of frustrated and it doesn't make any sense, and they just decide, well, numbers don't work, and that's not part of astrology. That's fine. I mean, that's cool. I just have a lot of cognitive dissonance. Like I see people and I think things are working, and then when I look at the data, if I'm seeing it, it should be there. It's just, you know, my life. Now, if you're kind of clever or experienced with these things, you might think to yourself, well, maybe Mercury and Uranus just don't sextile or trine each other in the sky, because Mercury's going retrograde 3 times a year, and there's all these weird complex motions of the planets. We don't know what the random distribution is. Maybe they just are not trine or sextile, like Jupiter trines the sun a lot. So if you get a group of people and they have Sun trine Jupiter, just because that's what Jupiter does, it turns stationary when it's trying the sun. It's just trying the sun a lot. So then we do, you might have heard this term, probably most of you have, control group. And a control group basically just means something to compare to.